For 100 years, the nightmare of the infantryman has remained exactly the same. You sit in a freezing trench, your boots caked in mud that feels like concrete, your heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. You grip your rifle until your knuckles turn white, waiting for the whistle, waiting for the order to climb over the parapet and run straight into a wall of machine gun fire. It is a terrifying, visceral lottery where survival is measured in inches and seconds. But last week, on a desolate, snow-dusted field in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine, that nightmare scenario shifted. It wasn't a subtle change. It was a violent tear in the fabric of military history. A Russian unit, dug deep into a fortified defensive line, was scanning the gray horizon. They were listening for the roar of a tank engine or the distinct crunch of boots on gravel. They were prepared to fight men. They were prepared to kill men. Instead, what emerged from the morning mist was something their training manuals had never mentioned. It was low to the ground, barely coming up to a man's knee, moving with the silent, electric hum of a stalking predator. It didn't breathe. It didn't flinch when the first warning shots kicked up dirt around it. It just kept coming, rolling over the craters with a mechanical inevitability that sent a chill down the spine of every soldier watching. The Russians hesitated. That hesitation was fatal, because they weren't looking at a machine. They were looking at the end of the human era of warfare. And they didn't even know what to call it. The object speeding toward them at 20 kilometers per hour was the Ironclad, a Ukrainian unmanned ground vehicle. To the naked eye, it looks like a rugged, remote-controlled car on steroids, armored against small arms and bristling with sensors. But to the soldiers in that trench, it was a ghost. As the Russians opened up with their AK-74s, expecting the attacker to dive for cover or retreat, the machine did the opposite. It stopped, stabilized itself on the uneven ground, and its turret, the Shablaya automated combat module, swiveled with a terrifying, robotic precision. There was no shaking hand, no adrenaline-fueled panic, just a cold mathematical calculation of angles and distance. It locked onto the muzzle flashes in the tree line and unleashed a barrage of 7.62 millimeters suppression fire that pinned the defenders to the bottom of their holes. This wasn't a suicide drone blowing itself up in a one-way mission. This was a soldier. It maneuvered, it suppressed, it drew fire to reveal enemy positions for the artillery waiting miles behind the lines. The radio chatter intercepted from the Russian side in those chaotic minutes was a mix of confusion and primal fear. They were fighting something that couldn't be killed, something that felt no pain, something that would not stop until its battery died or they did. But as the smoke cleared and the Ukrainian lines advanced behind their steel vanguard, a terrifying question began to circulate among the survivors. If this machine was out here fighting like a man, seeing what a man sees, and killing like a man kills, who or what was actually pulling the trigger? That question lies at the heart of the first you are seeing right now. We have seen drones drop grenades from the sky. We have seen sea drones blow up bridges. But this was the world's first confirmed, successful frontline assault by a ground robot against a human defensive position, where the robot acted as the point man. It physically occupied the death zone, that suicidal strip of land between two armies, and it won. It survived the encounter. This changes the entire calculus of the assault. For thousands of years, taking a trench meant trading blood for dirt. You send your bravest, most experienced soldiers first, knowing many would not come back. But on that field in Donbas, Ukraine flipped the script. They sent a machine to do the dying. The human operators were sitting safely in a bunker kilometers away, piloting the Ironclad through a video link, sipping coffee while their avatar fought for its life. It feels like science fiction, something out of a Terminator movie, but the footage is real, the body count is real, and the implications are staggering. We have officially crossed a threshold that ethicists and generals have been debating for decades. The barrier between soldier and machine has dissolved. But here is the thing that should keep you awake at night. This Ironclad wasn't a prototype. It wasn't a test. It was the first wave of a mass production line that is just getting started. And if this is the Model T of robot warfare, clunky and remote controlled, you have to ask yourself, what is currently being built in the secret laboratories of QIV in Moscow that doesn't need a human and pilot at all? To understand how we got to this point, you have to look under the hood of this new army. It isn't just one robot. It is an entire ecosystem, a mechanical zoo that is rapidly replacing the biological functions of a platoon. The Ironclad is the tip of the spear, the hunter, but trailing behind it is the Rys, or Lynx. It is a logistical mule, a flatbed robot designed to crawl through the heaviest shelling imaginable. In the past, if the squad was cut off and running low on ammo, you had to send human runners to a gauntlet of sniper fire to resupply them. Men died just to deliver bullets. Now, the Lynx hums quietly through the mud, carrying 150 kilograms of ammunition, water, and batteries to the front, and on its return trip, it does something even more critical. It carries the wounded. Combat medics are high-priority targets for Russian snipers. By using a robot to drag a wounded soldier out of the kill zone, Ukraine saves to lives the casualty and the medic. Then there are the radar-less kamikaze ground drones. These are small, fast, four-wheeled bombs designed to scurry under the weak belly armor of a T-90 tank and detonate. It is a terrifyingly effective ecosystem where every job that used to require human courage is now being outsourced to steel and silicon. But the true genius isn't the robots themselves, it's how they talk to each other. They aren't fighting alone. We are witnessing the birth of networked warfare in its purest form. Above the ironclad, hovering silently in the clouds, is a scout drone. It provides the god's eye view. It spots the Russian heat signatures in the trench and beams those coordinates down to the ground robot via Starlink satellite internet. The operator of the ironclad doesn't need to see the enemy with his own eyes. He is guided by the drone above. It creates a hunter-killer loop that is faster than human reflexes. The aerial drone spots the target, the ground robot suppresses it with machine gun fire, and then while the Russians are pinning their heads down, precision artillery wipes them out. It is a symphony of destruction conducted by invisible signals. The Russians are fighting a hydra where the head is miles away. But this reliance on the network is also the system's biggest weakness. The battlefield in Ukraine is the most radioactive place on Earth, and I don't mean nuclear. I mean electronic warfare. Russia has massive jamming stations that blast static across every frequency, trying to sever the invisible tether between the robot and its master. If the signal cuts, the robot stops. It becomes a useless paperweight. This game of cat and mouse between the signal and the jammer is driving innovation at a breakneck speed. The engineers in Ukraine knew that jamming was the ultimate threat. They knew that relying on a human with a joystick was a temporary solution. So, they began working on the kill switch for electronic warfare. The only way to beat a jammer is to remove the need for a signal entirely. You have to take the human out of the loop. This is where the story shifts from a tactical update to a glimpse of a terrifying future. We are already seeing prototypes of the ironclad equipped with terminal guidance systems. These are onboard AI chips similar to what you have in a Tesla, but designed for slaughter. The operator doesn't drive the robot anymore. He simply draws a box on a map and gives a command: clear this trench. The robot uses optical recognition to navigate the terrain. It uses thermal imaging to identify human shapes. It makes the decision to fire on its own based on its programming. It doesn't need a radio signal because the brain is inside the machine. This technology exists today. It is being tested right now. The Russians can jam the airwaves all they want, but they can't jam a machine that is thinking for itself. And once you give a machine the autonomy to pull the trigger, you have opened a door that can never, ever be closed. The driving force behind this robotic revolution isn't just technological curiosity, it is a cold, hard calculation of survival. It is about math. Ukraine is fighting a war of existence against a country with a population 3 times its size. Russia has a grim history of solving military problems by throwing bodies at them until the problem drowns in blood. They call them meat assaults, waves of conscripts sent to reveal Ukrainian firing positions. Ukraine cannot win that kind of war. They simply do not have the men. Every Ukrainian soldier is a precious, non-renewable resource. Training a competent infantryman takes 6 months. It costs tens of thousands of dollars in wages, equipment, and food. But the real cost is the experience. When a sergeant with 2 years of trench fighting experience is killed by a random mortar shell, that knowledge dies with him. You cannot manufacture a veteran, but you can manufacture an ironclad, and you can do it cheaply. This is the brutal economics of the new battlefield. Let's look at the balance sheet. A fully equipped ironclad UGV costs roughly $30,000 to $50,000. That sounds like a lot of money to you and me, but in the context of military procurement, it is a rounding error. A single Javelin anti-tank missile costs $175,000. A modern tank costs $10 million. If Russia wants to destroy an attacking robot, they have to hit it with something heavy. A bullet won't stop it. So they have to fire an RPG or use an FPV drone or call in an artillery strike. They might spend a $50,000 guided missile to destroy a $30,000 robot. That is a losing trade for Moscow. Every time they pull the trigger, they are bleeding money. Meanwhile, Ukraine can turn these robots out in converted garages and underground factories using commercial parts and 3D printers. If a robot hits a mine, you don't write a letter to a grieving mother. You don't have a funeral. You just sweep the scrap metal aside and send in the next one. It turns war into a factory production line. But there is a darker side to this efficiency. When you make war cheaper and you make the cost of attacking lower, you change the psychology of the conflict. The commanders on the ground are starting to view these robots not as tools but as ammo. You can be aggressive. You can take risks you would never take with human lives. You can send a robot into a suicide mission just to see what happens. And this creates a terrifying pressure on the other side to catch up. Russia is not sitting idle. They are watching this first just like we are, and they are mobilizing their own military-industrial complex to respond. We are seeing the start of a robot arms race. As we stand here looking at the smoking ruins of that trench in Ivanivka, we have to ask, where does this end? We are watching the sunset of the infantryman. For thousands of years, the defining image of war was a man with a weapon, standing his ground. That image is fading. The successful deployment of the ironclad proves that the point man, the most dangerous job in the army, is now a job for a machine. We are moving toward a future where human soldiers are the quarterbacks, not the linebackers. They will sit in air-conditioned trailers, surrounded by screens, managing swarms of robots that do the bleeding and the killing. It sounds cleaner, it sounds safer, but it removes the one thing that has always acted as a brake on the horror of war: the human hesitation. A soldier might hesitate to fire if he sees a civilian or if he feels something isn't right. A machine executing a line of code will not hesitate. It will not feel pity. It will simply execute. We are already seeing the next phase in the labs: swarm tactics. Imagine not just one ironclad, but a wolf pack of 20 small, coordinated robots. They communicate with each other instantly. One group lays down suppressing fire, another flanks to the left, and a third rushes in to detonate bunkers. They share targeting data in milliseconds, reacting to the battlefield as a single, hive-mind organism. No human commander can micromanage 20 robots at once. To make the swarm work, you have to give it control. You have to let the AI decide how to win the battle. And once you hand over that agency, you are no longer fighting the war, you are just starting it. The first we saw this week was a single robot killing a few soldiers. It was shocking. But what comes next is a battlefield where the sky is black with drones and the ground is crawling with machines, all fighting a war at the speed of processors, leaving us as spectators in our own destruction. The box is open. Pandora has left the building. Ukraine has shown the world that the robot army isn't a future concept for 2050. It is a reality for 2025. Every major military power is now rewriting their doctrines. China is watching. The US is watching. They see that the tank is a coffin and the infantryman is a target. The future belongs to the cheap, the expendable, and the autonomous. We used to worrying about the day when machines would wake up and decide to fight us. But the reality is much more mundane and much more frightening. We didn't need the machines to wake up. We just needed to be desperate enough to hand them the gun. And on a frozen field in Ukraine, we finally did. The age of the human soldier is over. The age of the machine has begun.